Hi, everybody. This is Dr. Nigro with the Chemistry Notes Screencast. This is the second in my series that deals with our Unit 5 material. That first screencast dealt with chemical kinetics, rates of reactions, and factors that influence those rates. The rest of the screencasts in this series are going to deal with chemical bonding. All right, so there's going to be several because I've tried to chunk it up into smaller bits. There are also going to be a couple where there's not a notes screencast. And if you need assistance with those topics, I'll tell you where to go to get that assistance. All right, so this one's going to look at general, what we mean by chemical bonding, how to determine what type of chemical bond might be there, and some properties that are associated with the different types of chemical bonds. All right, so first, let's talk about the forces. So what is the difference between inter and intra molecular forces? Now, these are two terms that we have been using throughout the year, and they are going to continue to pop up for the remainder of the year. So let's again make sure we understand. All right, if we're talking about an inter with that ER molecular force, those are those forces that are between molecules within a sample. All right, so those forces between molecules and intra RA molecular force. These are between atoms, whoops, within a molecule. All right, these are also known as bonds. All right, so again, intermolecular forces are between molecules within a sample, and intramolecular forces are between atoms within a molecule. So those are your chemical bonds. All right, now I have this figure to the left. You can ignore all the red delta symbols. We'll get to those at the end of the unit. All right, but we're going to label one of each type of force. All right, so I'm going to start with this dashed line. That's between the oxygen of one water molecule and the hydrogen of another. So because these are forces between molecules within a sample, this is one of our intermolecular forces. All right. If I go over to the water molecule on the right and I look at that line that is between the oxygen and the hydrogen within the water molecule, this is one of our intramolecular forces. This is one of our chemical bonds. All right. Now, these forces are important. Knowing their definitions are important. And then understanding which ones are stronger is important. So, which is stronger? Generally speaking, our intramolecular forces are going to be the stronger of the two. Those chemical bonds are going to be stronger. All right. Now, those intramolecular forces can be categorized into three different types of chemical bonds. All right. We can have ionic bonds, we can have covalent bonds, and we can have metallic bonds. All right, to identify which type of bond is going to be present within a particular molecule, you need to look at those elements. And then you need to understand what the different element types are from the periodic table. So you still need to understand where the metals are and where the nonmetals are, because that is going to be really important for this unit. All right, ionic bonds form between metals and non-metals, and they transfer their electrons from one to another. All right. Covalent bonds form between nonmetals and nonmetals, and they share their electrons. All right. The metallic bonds form amongst metal atoms. All right. And I'm going to put share, but I'm going to put them in parentheses because it's not the same as what we see with a covalent bond. All right. We're going to talk a little bit about metallic bonding, but we're not going to spend a lot of time there. Just keep in mind that the metal atoms are basically sharing their electrons in this big pool of electrons. They call it the sea of electrons. All right. So again, ionic bonds form between metals and nonmetals, covalent bonds between nonmetals only, and the metallic bonds are metals only. So those are our three options, right? All right, so here I have a table with a list of compounds, and then we're going to decide whether each compound is ionic, covalent, or metallic. All right, I do that by looking at the elements and then deciding whether I have metals, nonmetals, both, or only one of each. All right, so NH3, that's ammonia, so nitrogens and hydrogens. So those are both nonmetals. So that's going to make that a covalent bond that is being used there. Here I have potassium chloride, so that's a metal plus a nonmetal, so that's going to be ionic. All right. Iron and copper, so these are both metals. Now, this is a blend of metals, a mixture. That's going to be a specific type of mixture called an alloy. All right. But because it's only metals, that's going to be metallic bonding. Here we have silver nitrate. So that's a metal plus a non-metal portion. That's going to be ionic. Water, we all should know, is H2O. All right. So that's non-metals only. So that's going to be covalent. Aluminum hydroxide. So we've got a metal plus a non-metal portion. So that's going to be ionic. Carbon dioxide, CO2. This is nonmetals only, so that'll be covalent. Propane, which is C3H8, nonmetals only again, so covalent. Gold is a metal, so that's going to be metallic bonding. CCl4, carbon tetrachloride, that's going to be nonmetals only, so covalent. And then copper 2 sulfate, metals plus nonmetals, ionic. All right, so I should be able to give you any compound's formula or name, and you should be able to tell me whether it uses ionic bonding, covalent bonding, or metallic bonding. Okay? All right, now in class, we're going to do a lab. And as part of that lab, you're going to look at different physical properties of compounds as a way to kind of start to sort ionic, covalent, and metallic compounds based on these physical properties. All right, so a couple things that you should be able to recognize for the different compounds are the elements involved, what they do with their electrons. Generally speaking, what are their melting and boiling points? And by general, I mean high, middle, or low. All right. Are they conductive? So can they conduct electricity? Are they soluble in water? An example of one. And then I'm going to add one more in here that's not in here currently. What is their general state at room temperature? So they're solids, are they liquids, are they gases, or are they a blend? All right, so we're going to start with ionic. So the elements involved are metals and non-metals. All right, now as you worked through the lab, you hopefully will come up with these same answers, but we're going to fill them anyway. Now, electrons, you're not going to get that from the lab. You just need to know that they transfer their electrons. All right, melting and boiling points for ionic compounds tend to be high. All right, that ionic bond is very strong. It's very difficult to disrupt. So if you want it to change state, either from a solid to a liquid or a liquid to a gas, you're going to have to put in a lot of energy to make that happen, which means that you're going to have very high temperatures. All right. Are they conductive? Yes, but, and the but is very important, only when aqueous or a liquid. All right. So only when dissolved or melted. All right. The solid state is non-conductive. If you took a big beaker of NaCl solid and you tried to conduct electricity, it would not work. All right. The ions need to be able to move, and they cannot do that in the solid state. They can only do that when they are a liquid or when they are dissolved. Okay. Soluble in water. Yes. All right. There are some exceptions. There are insoluble compounds, but for the most part, they're going to be soluble. All right. In an example, we'll just use our classic sodium chloride. Oh, I forgot about state at room temperature. These guys are solids at room temperature. And again, that's going to come back to that strong ionic bond. All right. Now let's talk about our covalent molecules. These are nonmetals only, and they share their electrons. Their general melting point, all right, I'm going to say low, generally speaking. All right, if you think about it, ice melts at 0 degrees Celsius. That's 32 degrees Fahrenheit. That's pretty low. All right, water boils at 100 degrees Celsius. That's pretty low compared to what the ionic compounds can do. So we're going to just list those guys as low. All right, are they conductive? No. All right, there's no ions present, so they are non-conductive. All right, are they soluble in water? Some of them are. All right, we're going to learn that the intermolecular forces are also going to be very important to determine solubility. All right, so some of them are. All right. All right, and then state at room temperature, these tend to be liquids or gases. All right, you don't have a lot of solid covalent molecules at room temperature. They tend to be liquids or gases. All right, examples. All right, well, water for sure. All right, another one, methane, CH4, carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide. There's a whole bunch. All right, and then last but certainly not least, the metallic compounds. These are our metals only. All right, and that can be a pure metal or it can be an alloy, a blend of metals. All right, what do they do with their electrons? They share, sorta. All right, basically the electrons are delocalized. All right, and we call it the C of electrons. That just basically means you have a bunch of nuclei. They're all positively charged, and then you just have all these electrons floating all over the place. All right. And they just basically allow things to happen around those metal atoms. It allows them to be very malleable and ductile because they act kind of as a lubricant. So the nuclei can kind of move past one another. It's really, it gives the metals a lot of their physical properties. One of which is their melting and boiling points tend to be middle of the road, comparatively speaking. Now, you might say, well, iron seems to have to be pretty hot to melt, which is true. All right, but there are other metals like mercury, which is a liquid at room temperature already, so it's already melted. There are other metals like gallium, that's a solid at room temperature, but if you hold it in your hand, the heat from your hand is enough to melt it. All right, so it's going to be a range, all right, but they are not as high as our ionic compounds and they are not as low as our covalent compounds. So we're just going to say mid. Now, conductivity, yes, and they are conductive in all states. All right, so that's going to separate them some from ionic compounds, which cannot conduct in the solid state, whereas metals can. All right, are they soluble in water? Nope. Thank goodness, because then metals would melt all the time, and that's not really melt. They would dissolve. If it rains, that would be very bad. All right, and their state at room temperature, these also tend to be solids with a few exceptions, mercury being the main exception there. All right, examples, we could do iron, right? Or you could have something like brass, which is an alloy, a mixture of metal atoms. All right. So you should be able to look at the formula of a compound and know whether it's going to form ionic bonds, covalent bonds, or metallic bonds. From there, you should have an idea about what those electrons are doing. Are they being transferred? Are they being shared? And then how that impacts the melting point and boiling point, their conductivity, their solubility, their state at room temperature, and then some examples. All right. And that's really it for kind of our intro to bonding. All right. So if you have any questions about any of that stuff, let me know.